All right, good afternoon. I'm going to give you a little update on the PG study. I think probably most of you are familiar with what the study is about. This year will mark the 10th anniversary since we started looking at pavement preservation as part of our research, so I think that's very significant. The study has grown over the years, so since then, not only in the number of sponsors and the amount of funding, the number of test sections. So right now we monitor and analyze 145 test sections, which is nothing to sneeze at. We have many of those sections that are still in good or fair condition, even after either 10, 7, 6, 3 years, depending on where we are. So that also tells us a lot about what pavement preservation can do if we're using it correctly. For those of you who don't know about the study, or if you need a little reminder, this is just a summary of where we are and how many sections and the type of conditions that we have. So the top bars with the orange color are the southern locations. So we have Lee Road 159, which is where everything started, and that's low traffic. And then we have US 280 that is going to be 7 years old this summer. So those are our southern locations, warm climate, that type of condition. And then we have 3 different sites in Minnesota. So we have CASA 8, which is another county road, low traffic. We have US 169, which is the higher traffic location. So they're similar to Lee Road and US 280 respectively. And then the sections from 70th Street, where we put down some coal recycle sections that will be 3 years old in this August. So those will be our northern cold climate sections. We have the 2 extremes, and we are able to get a lot of information from all of them. One thing that we're always asked about is, have we done anything since we built them? And for most of them, the answer is no. We have 1 section on Lee Road that had to be repaired in 2018, and it was half the section. And then we had some repairs on US 169 back in 2020, and those were control sections. So other than that, not really a whole lot that has had to be done, and that is also good. Minnesota has done some crack sealing, so that's part of what they routinely do, and they've done that in some of our test sections as well. But nothing major, and I think we're seeing better performance than what we expected from most of those sections. And that can also be important because now we can really use the numbers that are telling us what that actual performance will be. To give just a quick snapshot of where we are in terms of performance, and this is cracking. So we have, for most of them, falling somewhere in the fair range for cracking. That will be 5% to 20% cracking for the sections. Some of them still have some good sections with less than 5% cracking, so that also says a lot. Even Lee Road, where they have been down for 10 years, we still have 1 section there hanging tough with less than 5% cracking. We do have a bunch of sections that are more than 20% on Lee Road, and that's to be expected for some of the treatments at 10 years old. But for the most part, I think we're still hanging on in that good to fair condition range. And this is the type of cracking that we see, so we also have to take that into account. It's not falling apart necessarily. For the southern sections, what we will typically see is some cracking along the wheel path, so maybe that will be categorized as a low severity fatigue cracking, but the cracks are still pretty tight. They're just holding the pavement together. For the northern sections, we have more of the thermal cracking. And it's pretty severe in some of the cases, but not really anything else other than that. So that is the type of condition that we might see, depending on where we're looking at. We also have to take into account that cracking is cracking that was there before we did anything, and now it's reflecting through. And it doesn't matter what type of treatment you have, it will get there somehow at some point. For example, here we have a transition between a cape seal and a chip seal. and you'll see some cracking running through both of the sections. It may have gone through at different points in times, but it did nonetheless. And we have to remember, it was there before and it's just coming back. And we were able to delay that getting any worse or deteriorating any further by applying our pavement preservation treatments. For the northern section, we have cracking in the shoulders, and those were not replaced or repaired. And then that cracking found its way again through the sections. But again, depending on which treatment we have, it may be better or worse. Definitely better than if we hadn't done anything. IRI is not much of an issue for the southern sections as it is for the northern sections. You can see there, Lee Road, for the most part, most of the sections are in the green category, and that's according to map 21, so that's less than 95 inches per mile. And then we have some in the fair category. Most of that on Lee Road specifically has to do with the short sections, so it's a little deceiving that we see numbers between 95 and 170 inches per mile. Sometimes it's a result of those shorter sections, but it's pretty stable over time. Where we do see an effect is on CASA 8. So you can see there most of the sections in that fair category, some of them even in the poor category, so some are pretty rough. And that is really a result of, again, that thermal cracking that happens there, very aggressive. So that's something that we also want to keep in mind. Very difficult to have a treatment, a pavement preservation treatment that can stop this, but it can certainly minimize its effect. For rutting, we haven't really had a problem. Most of the sections didn't really have any rutting, and they have stayed that way over time. And just now we're seeing some of them falling into the fair category, so just over 5 millimeters in rut depths. But most of them, if they're in the fair category, they're just past that threshold. So maybe they might be 6-7 millimeters at most. So it doesn't really represent much of an issue for us. And trying to look for a picture that will show us that this is the best that I could come up with. So as you can see, not much of a problem in our case. So we have seen that the benefits of doing pavement preservation, it's more notably in the crack reduction part of things. We can see other indicators helping also improve that condition of the pavement in terms of other indicators. And I wanted to give a little preview of one TRB paper that we have coming up, and I just submitted like the edits yesterday, so it should be getting published, I hope soon. You can look for it probably in the next couple of weeks. But we're using the same approach as what we have done for cracking. So we look at untreated sections versus treated sections, compare how long it takes to get to a point, and see, well, what's the life extending benefit based on that. And maybe graphically we can see it better. We'll have time and we'll have IRI. And then we're gonna have a section that doesn't have any treatment, and we'll see how IRI progresses over time in that case. But if we do have a treatment, then we're gonna see an improvement. First of all, immediate improvement where we're gonna improve our IRI and lower it. And then over time, it's also gonna show, because that curve is now a little flatter. So we're gonna have a performance jump just right after it's applied. And in this case, this is a paper for thin overlays, but we can do the same analysis for all the treatments. And then we're looking at a threshold. How long does it take for a given treatment, in this case, a given type of overlay, to get to the poor condition category, and how long would it have taken if we hadn't done anything? And if we see the difference between those two, then we can calculate our life extending benefits. So it's very similar to what we have done with cracking for all of these years, but I wanted to show that we're also looking at other indicators and not just cracking. So we have looked at the control sections. You can see there, this is for CASA 8, and we had control sections that were not very rough, so they were still in that good condition category, less than 95 inches per mile. And we had some control sections that were in the fair condition category. So we separated the two, we generated new models for them, and then compared that to the treatments that you can see there. CASA 8, again, is where we see most of the roughness issues. So it's a good example. But some of the other sides, these are really flat horizontal lines, so we haven't been able to get much of a number associated to it. From this work that we've done, if we looked at the life extending benefit and for thin overlays or combinations of chip seals and overlays, we came up with an average of 5.4 years for life extension. If we're doing the combinations, we might get more, as you can see there, maybe 8 years or 6 years. But it's important that we can get that much time before we are in that very rough condition, and it's certainly something that's very significant for an agency in that cold climate. So if it works that well for them who have those very aggressive conditions, imagine what it can do if we're putting it down here in the South, for example. Something that we've also seen, again, if we were looking at some of the other sites, it doesn't really help us come up with a quantity at this point because most of the lines are pretty flat. As we gather more data, we'll probably get there at some point where we can give a number. It's also important to know that that performance jump, that immediate improvement that we've seen is higher if you have a rougher section, which now you're thinking, well, wasn't I supposed to do something when we were still in good condition? And that makes sense because if it's rougher, we have more room for improvement. So certainly we can bring the condition back down to a lower IRI. But now the question is, can we sustain that over time? So that's part of also what we wanted to look at. Something else is that we use different milling machines in Minnesota. So we had a full width milling machine and then one that was only 8 feet wide. Then we saw differences between those two. So when we were using the full width, we were able to achieve better roughness than when we were doing the 8 feet wide machine. At the end, the life extending benefit for the sections is better if you have a lower pretreatment IRI. So if your IRI is high and you treat it, you may see a more immediate change. But if you're treating it when you're still in a good range, then you see that benefit sustain over time. So that's the importance of targeting the right pavement at the right time so we can see more benefits throughout the entire period. And I think the image that says it all is this one. We can see here an untreated pavement at the bottom of the photograph. And then on the far side, we'll have an overlay placed over a chip seal. And we have those ugly thermal cracks. We are not going to be able to completely get rid of them, but certainly they do look different when we put them side by side. Which side do we want to be on? It's definitely going to impact your IRI, your overall condition, your public acceptance, everything. So this is a good solution that we can use to try and improve that condition of our pavement network. Just a reminder of everything that goes into our PG study. So the main goal is to study that life extending benefit. And again, we've looked at it a lot in terms of cracking. Now I just show you how we do it in terms of IRI. We've also looked at the structural health of the pavement. So we know we're not adding structural capacity, but we can keep something that is structurally sound that way for a longer time. So similar type of analysis again over time if we didn't do anything versus putting down some kind of preservation treatment. We've also done work with coal recycle techniques. So we have CCPR, CIR, FDR, and we've been looking at calculating, for example, layer coefficients that people can use for design. We've been looking at lab versus field performance because that's an area where not a lot has been done. We look at functional life, so things like friction, texture, noise, how is that impacted when we put down a pavement preservation treatment? We have overlays, thin overlays that are open graded friction courses, and we've looked at functional life. How long do we keep that those voids open? How long can we keep the frictional characteristics on those? Those OGFCs were built with different types of tack codes. So that's also something that we wanted to see. Is there a difference when you use one type of tack code versus the other? And in general, some different materials that we have incorporated. So we have some fibers that we've used in some of the microsurfaces. We have HIMA for thin overlays as well as microsurfacing. We've used rejuvenators. We put down rejuvenating Fox seals, and we have rejuvenators in hot mix where we had wrap and rast, and then just the wrap and rast themselves. So there's a lot, not just the life extending part of it, but there's a lot more that we have been able to look into. And if you want to see some of those results, you can go to our webpage, and we have a tab dedicated to just what publications we've put out there. You can look at the different links in there. If there's something that doesn't have a link or you don't have access to, feel free to contact me, and I can certainly get you a copy. And going forward now, one thing that's important is that we have extended the pool fund all the way through December 2023. And for the remaining time that we have between now and then, our emphasis is going to be on implementation. So we definitely want to make sure that everything that we've done and everything that we have found out is something that you can take and apply that to your own payment management system. So we formed a technical advisory panel. We had a few meetings. We're trying to get some direction on where you guys want things to go. What's more useful, because ultimately you'll be the final users of these results. We are planning a series of webinars to discuss different treatment types or treatment categories more in depth. We never have enough time to go through everything that we want to see and show you everything that we found. So the idea is that we'll have every other month a 2-hour meeting where we'll go from the time we constructed sections all the way through what we saw for performance. And you can ask anything that maybe we haven't been able to answer during other meetings. So definitely a very in-depth look at those different treatments. And that's probably going to start in July. So we'll make sure to let everyone know when we host those. We also want to have workshop type of activities, technical assistance. If the sponsors feel like we should be going to their agencies and show them how to take those results and use them, we can do that. And we are also thinking of, or started to develop tools to share the results. So I want to show you now demo of something that we put on our website. And here we go. So if you see, there's a tab for observed performance, and if you click on it and just get into the NCAT website, there's the payment preservation tab at the top. This is for Lee Road 159, but we want to do it for all the different sites. So you can select which treatment you want to look at, and it will filter and show you only the results for that treatment. So those right there are cracking curves. They're fitted, so now they're a little nicer than just the observed. And you can look at just a particular pre-treatment condition category, and it will give you the treatment versus the untreated, and you can compare what the two look like. You can also select a given point in time. If you want to see benefits at year 5, for example, what that means, it will tell you how long the untreated section takes to reach the poor condition category, how long does it take for the treated section. In this case, you see a dash there because it hasn't reached that point. And it also tells you the difference in cracking between treated and untreated. In this case, for that point in time, if you don't select a point in time, it will be an average of the 10 years. We also have performance for rutting and IRI, which are those bars right there. And we have them at 3 points in time. So pre-treatment, post-construction, and current. And with the color coding, you can see where we are right now at this point in time, or at any of those 3 points in time. And then at the bottom, we'll have the overall treatment condition based on the MAP 21 criteria. So it'll tell you how much cracking, how much rutting, what the IRI is, and how it will classify based on those. So if you feel like playing with this, it's there, it's live. You can go to our website and play with that. We'll try to put that demo in there to help with the instructions, but right now, I think if you just want to go and click on it and get some sense of where the different treatments are, that will help. Just to summarize, the treatments we feel continue to be effective, definitely outperforming the untreated condition category. If we're thinking that we're doing all of these calculations based on reaching a poor condition threshold, we have a lot of sections that are far from that target still. We'll see over the next couple of years almost where we end up. But definitely we can see that there's always a benefit, and we can quantify that benefit using a relevant parameter. So whether that's cracking, IRI, or whatever it may be, we can get a difference from a treated versus an untreated, and I hope that helps all the agency people with their payment management systems. So with that, I just want to thank you for your time.
The preceding was produced by the National Center for Pavement Preservation. More information can be found on the web at pavementpreservation.org. Additional support provided by Michigan State University.